There's not enough space for my thoughts. It's already filled with something else. So the world isn't empty after all. I can't see anything. Milk Outside a Bag of Milk Outside a Bag of Milk is a dark, surreal, and gorgeously illustrated video game from the end of 2021, available on Windows and Linux. The script was written by the project leader, Nikita Kryukov, and Maho Maiden, creator of Reflexia, a genre deconstruction drama whose prototype released in 2022. The fourth video game from Kryukov, Milk Outside, begins almost immediately after the ending of the 2020 release, Milk Inside a Bag of Milk Inside a Bag of Milk. If such a recent title can be called a cult classic, Milk Inside is a cult classic. This predecessor, an artistic manipulation with word and form, only then a game, takes less than an hour to clear and, at full price, costs $1. So if you're interested, there's no reason not to try it. Both titles involve an unnamed girl suffering from psychosis and disorganized thinking who must carry out elementary pieces of daily life. In the first, going to the grocery store, and in the second, going to bed, and the player taking on the role of a somewhat belligerent voice in her head to hopefully steer her toward a happier outcome. Fans have taken to calling the girl, woman? Milk-chan. No evidence suggests a Japanese setting, but she is drawn in an anime style, although ironically is lactose intolerant, and bears no relation to Super Milk-chan. Milk Inside and Milk Outside are visual novels, but neither tells a high-concept story with lore and world-building or a big reveal that neatly solves everything like a puzzle. All of the literal events of Milk Inside are portrayed in the Serial Experiments Lain-esque animated cutscene created by Alina Chrome that opens Milk Outside. The protagonist walks to a convenience store, buys a bag of milk, and walks back to her apartment, where her terrifying mother lets her inside. Oddly, this opening cutscene also depicts the unnamed protagonist picking up a box of milk instead of a bag, but for all I know, bags of milk are often sold inside boxes. Where I live, milk comes in cartons. Lain is an appropriate point of comparison, given that it too stars a brown-haired young girl afflicted with an unspecified psychotic disorder who spends her time staring at power lines. One of the pivotal events of Milk-chan's life, the player might learn, even involves someone she meets online. In ironic contrast to Milk-chan's previous adventure, Milk Outside takes place entirely indoors. An opening cutscene depicts Milk-chan navigating her apartment trying to escape hallucinations of shadow monsters, before her mother grabs her and seemingly injects her with some kind of drug, and forces her to promise she will never drink milk again. Afterward, inside her room, after some conflict over taking her pills, Milk-chan's thoughts transform into 6 fireflies that scatter around her stuff. Milk-chan's able to find one herself. In Milk Inside, Milk-chan resolves her conflict by asking the player to treat her like a visual novel protagonist. This time she picks a different genre. Now I want to become a point-and-click adventure game character.
A handle attached to a rotating shaft which transmits and modifies rotary motion and torque.
The cursor, rather than the girl on screen, is the player character. Clicking on different objects in the room, a shadowless line drawing, yet immaculately realized, comprises the core gameplay. Each item elicits a unique conversation with Milk-chan. The player's concrete goal is to find the 5 remaining fireflies. Depending on what the player clicks on and presses Milk-chan about, she will experience one of 5 possible dreams. The largest hurdle to seeing every dream is a choice that precedes the point-and-click section, which elicits a flashback of Milk-chan being attacked, locking the player into a specific dream. The dreams are the 5 different endings. Every dream triggers the same animated concluding cutscene and credit sequence, arguably giving the girl the happy ending she desires, to dream. But each dream distinguishes itself with contrasting tones and, in a further display of visual excellence, a unique pixel art style that makes every one well worth seeing. This gameplay also returns the visual novel to the point-and-click adventure games that spawned the format. The exploration of a single room to reach multiple possible outcomes, though limited in scope, also taps into a sense of freedom and of place, largely absent in the simple route and abstract, minimalistic graphics of Milk Inside. As Milk Outside lacks any lose state to discourage experimentation, it all results in a more dynamic experience. However, the constriction of the original is likely a deliberate choice. Milk Outside feels less alienating and experimental, more mainstream than Milk Inside. I wonder whether something has been lost. Also making Milk Outside more accessible is the most obvious change from its predecessor. Far more detailed artwork and animations. In Milk Inside, the player could only glimpse Milk-chan in the ending or the game over screen, but now the player sees Milk-chan whenever she talks to us with her distorted, digitized voice. The artwork remains eerie, and its color palette limited, in this case to red and black, with the exception of Milk-chan's strikingly aquamarine skin. In another context, this might render her appearance corpse-like. Here, however, the greenish-blue is a soothing contrast to the colors of her environment, which connote blood and darkness, rather than, say, anarcho-syndicalism. The contrast between this primary style and Milk-chan's dreams displays a virtuosity of pixel illustration. The phone dream in particular seems like it comes from an entirely different video game. It's clear why Milk-chan wishes to dream of spaces, though most are nightmarish, so different from her own. The oppressive and viscous soundtrack is, yes, oppressive, particularly the agonizing roars that blare from Milk-chan's radios. Thinking reminds me of Silent Hill, a track like White Noise. But the music can also be sublime, as in Concrete Circle, or almost Yume Nikki-like in tracks like Paper Music and Sleepy, setting a tone of comfy, intimate darkness appropriate for standing beside a girl lying in her bed, or sleeping bag, opening up about her past. And sure, Milk-chan lives in a nightmare, but it's her nightmare, you know? While Milk-chan has suicidal thoughts, she also doesn't entirely despise the reality in which her brain and trauma have trapped her. Sometimes I feel like the whole world pretends to be crazy, as if it's trying to make me believe in something that doesn't exist. At the same time, it makes me feel a little bit happy. Everything around me was created for my sake, to deceive, trick, confuse me. If that's true, I guess I'm not so crazy myself after all. And in an era where social narratives, already frequently false, have been poisoned by rampant misinformation, and states, corporations, and political groups engage in international propaganda wars that increasingly lay ruin to any sense of shared reality, how delusional is Milk-chan's belief that the world is out to deceive her? 1 billion pounds of concrete and 1 million miles of emptiness. It's impossible to stay sane when you're near cosmic numbers like that, looking at them, touching them. Even thinking of them makes me feel unimaginable horror. When I see her descend stairs under the power of some outside force, in an expanse of concrete pillars, monolithic products of an inhuman industry as alien as blame, my thoughts tend more in this direction, toward the political machinations that have caused Milk-chan's apartment building to gradually cover the horizon, than toward the more immediate interpersonal betrayals and abuse the writers probably intended. If there's a flaw with Milk Outside, it's the lack of an ability to skip through text the player has already read. The opening before the main gameplay being clicking around Milk-chan's room, is several minutes long and, while gripping the first go, will be rather less on the sixth. Most visual novels incorporate a fast-forward feature so that the player can see every ending without extensive rereading. I say if there is a flaw, because this could well be a stylistic choice, Kryukov endeavoring to force the player to wallow in an ounce of the routine repetition that must grind Milk-chan down. This could also well be me not figuring out which key skips text. Then again, the itch.io page claims that Milk Outside features a degree of randomization. Each playthrough is unique. However, some dialogue lines, images, and scenes have only a small chance of appearing. You'll have to really get close to the girl in order to find out everything she hides. This promises replay value beyond the different endings. In my playthroughs, the only differences I noticed were different illustrations after the strangulation scene. The first seemed to portray someone gulping down a bag of milk, and different background images oozing behind Milk-chan and her furniture. True enough, then, that no two playthroughs were exactly alike. In my first, 2 giant eyes peered through her windows. But I wonder whether there are discrepancies more substantive than background graphics. Especially given the bleak, paranoia-inducing surroundings of atomized modernity, in comparison with which the girl and her vulnerability is a breath of light and hope, it's difficult not to love unlucky Milk-chan. While assessing whether this depiction of what seems to be schizophrenia rings true to life isn't my place, some reviewers on Steam, at least, strongly identify with Milk-chan's experiences. Sympathetic portrayals of psychosis are certainly rare in media. Consider how the word psychotic itself connotes not severe mental illness, but murderous frenzy. A compassionate eye cast on the subject always makes me glad, and, in a well-made piece of digital art, even more so. So yeah, Milk Outside a Bag of Milk Outside a Bag of Milk is a good use of $9. You can buy it on Steam or itch.io. Boo, why is my face always so stupid? I wonder what the others at school will think. This video was largely me reading a post I made on my website macrophones.com a few years back. Well, I don't like reusing old material for my website like this, and believe me, there's more coming. I thought I'd better spread awareness of this video game here on YouTube, where far more people are likely to see my review than on my website. If you like this video, please let YouTube know by leaving a like and a comment, and share it with people you think might be interested. Every bit helps. Also helpful, if you want, is donating some money to my Ko-fi. I've had this YouTube channel for years, and I've seen ads being run on my stuff, ads I've never asked for, even on videos with no copyright claims. So I'd like to make at least a few dollars for my effort here. So yeah, Ko-fi is also linked in the description. Ending a review, or any sort of video on these calls to action, feels sorta crass. But hey, that's life. Stay safe out there, everybody. As a kiss, if you want a kiss.